What Express is? I think we talked about this in the very beginning. What is it again? It's the E in the MERN stack, yes. And what are we going to... So specifically, what's it going to do for us? You guys remember?
Isn't that going to kind of be a liaison between our interface and database?
Yeah, actually, that's one way of thinking of it. Express is going to allow us to create a very simple web server so that we can basically provide some data for our front end, okay? So we're going to have two separate applications going on. We're going to have this front end React application that we've been doing, all last week. And now we're just going to have this thing on the back end that just provides some data. That's all it does. So in the same way that last week when we were interacting with the SpaceX API, we're going to now be able to create our own APIs that kind of do the same thing. All right. So in order to do this, let's just kind of set up our own new project here. Clear out of here. Oh, you guys can't see that. That better?
Huge.
All right. That's huge. Stacks, MERN, lectures. And then let's create a new folder. We'll just call this Express Demo. So make dir Express Demo. And then I'm going to code Express Demo. Yeah, it's kind of a handy little shortcut. So now that I've got this folder open here, what I want to do is I want to initiate an npm project. Okay? So what this is going to allow us to do is it'll allow us to install some different dependencies that we're going to need. Now in this case, we're really only going to have one dependency. So the way that we initialize a project is we say npm init. Okay? And then I'm just going to show you guys kind of the long way because this is our first time, but it's going to ask you a number of, well, what happened here? Okay, so this is what I was expecting. It's going to ask us a number of different questions about our project. Okay, so it's asking us here, what do we want our project or our package to be called? You can press enter to just accept the default. It's going to be the name of the folder that you're in. Okay, the version you can specify, 1.0.0, we're just going to keep that. Description, I'll leave that blank. Entry point is going to be index.js, test command. Git repo, if you guys actually had this up on, on GitHub or something like that, you could put that in there. Keywords, we'll skip that too. Author, put myself in here. All right, license, ISC. And then it's going to ask you, are these configurations okay? And you can just say yes. Okay, now notice what happened here. We got a new file created for us. You guys been seeing that package.json anywhere? Yeah, so when we run create React app and we create a new project, it's been creating a package.json for us. All right. Now this time when we created our project, we can glance and see what's in here. You'll see it's got the name that I specified here, the version, it's got the main, and all that's saying is what's the main entry point for the application. All right. I don't actually have an index.js, so keep that in mind. Also, we can have some scripts in here for things that we want to do. Like if we wanted to test our application, we would be able to say npm run test, and then it would run whatever the script that I set up in here was. Now notice that it just says echo error, no test specified. So if I go down to my my terminal again here and I say npm run test, there's that little echo there that you guys saw, right? Yeah. No test specified. Okay. All right, and then what else do we have here? Author and the license. I don't have any dependencies listed in here because I haven't yet installed anything. Right? Did you have a question, Shazza?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a difference between package.json and package lock.json.
Yes, there is a difference. So package.json is just the global information for our project. Package lock is actually essentially locking the different dependencies that we have to specific versions. Okay? So you guys won't need to mess with package lock.json. Usually it will update as we make updates to our package.json. Okay?
This is like the settings file in Django, basically.
Yeah, you can kind of think of it that way. Yeah, good call. All right, so let's come down here. We know we want to install Express because this is an Express demo. Oh, real quick, next time we create a new project, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm just going to say npm init -y. And what -y does is it's just going to accept all of those defaults for us so that we don't have to keep specifying, this is what I want the title to be and all that stuff, right? Or the name.
What is -G?
You mean the -y right here?
No, -G. I remember.
Oh, -G is global. So when we're installing a package, that means that it's not just available in this folder, it's available everywhere on my computer. Okay? All right. So now that we got that out of the way, somebody want to grab the door, please? Thank you much. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install Express. So we can just say npm install Express. Okay? And if we go, while we're waiting for that to install, I was just going to show it to you guys on npmjs.com. We can search for Express here and just see how popular this package is. All right? So if you click on this, you'll see the weekly downloads on Express are over 10 million. So pretty popular, as you might imagine. Yeah. Now there are other server-side frameworks that you could be using in Node.js, but this is by far the most, the most popular one. All right. If I go back to my terminal here, that should be done, and then you guys can see that we now have a dependency added here to this dependencies object, and it says, what this is saying is we want at least version 4.17.1. Okay? And then if you were to look inside that package lock.json, you'd see, where's Express here? So you can see it's actually saying 4.17.1 right there. Okay? Why is it that there seem to be so many things inside of our package lock here? And why is Node module so fat right now? What happened there? So here's why. When I install a dependency, that dependency may have other dependencies as well. So in order for Express to work properly, it also needs to install all of the dependencies that it needs. And you can see that if we go back to npm JS here, see how it says it has 30 dependencies? And it's telling you what they are. Okay?
And so what's dependent? Other things depend on Express itself?
No, actually it's reversed. They're the things that Express depends on. Yeah.
What is the other one? 38,070.
So that means there are 30,000+ packages which depend on Express.
Oh.
That's a lot, right? Yeah. So again, that's sort of another indication of how popular this package is, right? Okay. No, React is not dependent on Express. And the reason why I want to kind of make a point of that is that we could use any backend or we could use no backend entirely, right? Before, when we were creating our React apps, we were creating them with no backend, right? We were just kind of like putting some data on the screen in a certain way or whatever. We didn't need to actually have a data source. But if we want to have a backend, Express is a very popular backend to use. All right. So let's close out of this. And then I'm going to just minimize this over here. What we want to create is just our main server file. This is where we're going to have all of our main logic in here. So I'm just going to have a server.js. And inside the server.js file, I need to actually import Express. Now, how do you guys think we would import Express?
Import Express.
Yeah, you would think it would be something like import Express from Express. But actually, since we're in a Node environment and the whole import specification hasn't been made official yet, we actually have to use a different way. We have to use what's called a require statement. Okay? So we're going to say const express equals require express. Okay, and then what we'll do before we run this file, let's just log out what this express is. Okay, and then I'll go back to my terminal here and we'll just say node server.js. You guys can see that there's a whole lot to this express import that we just did. So what is it? It's a function, right, that will allow us to create an application. All right.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing it from scratch like this, before using Create React App, is it different when you're running stuff on top of that? Or?
No, again, Create React App is going to be sort of its own thing for us.
Can you install Express on top of that?
We'll be doing it in the same project. It won't be like on top of that. Okay, so we'll just have one folder that holds the entire project, and then we'll have one folder that's like the back end of that, and then we'll have another folder that's the front end.
So pretty much
Okay.
building on parallel.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so since this thing is importing a function that's going to allow us to create an application, let's actually invoke that function. So what we'll do is we'll say const app equals the result of invoking this express function. Okay? And now the only other thing we really need to do to get our application going is we need to invoke this method called listen. And the listen method is going to take in some port that we want this app to run on. So I can just say app.listen. Now I'm not going to do port 3000 because usually our create React app is going to be running on that specific port. So let's just pick something else. I was just going to say 5000. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And now here, if I go down here, let me clear out of this. Let's say I want this to run in such a way that it's constantly refreshing itself. What do I want to run it with again? NodeMon, right? That way if I make any changes to server.js, they'll be reflected immediately. So we'll say NodeMon server.js. Okay? And now you can see it's watching for changes. And if I were to go to port 5000, okay, cannot get /. So what's that telling me? Yeah, I can't. I don't have an actual get route for the index route. So let's create that. So inside my server.js, this is how we'll do it. We're going to say app.get. So I'm going to invoke the get function. What do you guys think get might take in? What have we been passing to functions a lot? No? Other functions, right? We've been passing in callback functions all the time. Here we're going to do it again. Okay? So I'm going to pass in a callback function. That callback function is going to take in a request and a response. It's pretty much convention that you guys are going to use rec and res. Okay, and then inside the body of this function, I'm just going to return out a string right now. So we'll just say res.send, and then inside here, I'm going to say hello from Express. Okay, and then that restarted for us, so I should be able to go back to my browser and actually see that. The only thing is I forgot to specify the path. Okay? So we also, what we're saying here is that this is going to accept GET requests, but I have to specify on what path I'm listening for that. So the first argument will just be a string that has a / in it like this. Okay? So let's go back real quick. There we go. Hello from Express. So let's make sure we know what's going on here. Shazay, tell me what's happening on line 5.
app.get / which is index.
Well, what is this? When we say app.get, what are we doing? We're not really getting anything. We are invoking this function called get, right? And then we're passing it into arguments. The first argument is just the path. The second argument is what?
Is the res, which is
It's not rec and res. What's the second argument? Second argument is a function, right? That's our callback function. Okay. Now, if it's a little more clear, I can also pull this out so that so that we don't cause as much confusion. So I could just say const. I'll just call it index callback, and then I'll set that equal to this inline function that we had here. Okay, and then inside here I'll just say index callback. Okay, so hopefully this will make it a little bit more clear. When we invoke this function get, we're passing in the path, and then we're also passing in the callback function that we want to run. Right? That callback function is going to take in a request and a response, and then we're going to use the response object and call this send method on it, and just pass in some string that we want to give back to the client. Okay?
The request can be get or post.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll get to the methods a little bit too. You guys feel pretty good about this?
Yeah, but it was better when it was one.
Really? You prefer it in line like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because imagine if they have like 50 routes. You would have to have a callback for each one, right?
Yeah.
And each one has to point to a different get request.
Yeah, so later on when we modularize, we'll kind of have the best of both worlds, because we'll be able to pass in a named callback, and then in some other file, that's where we'll have actually all the logic happening.
And callback, right?
Huh?
And callback.
Hell callback? Oh, callback hell.
Callback.
Yeah, we want to try to avoid that at all costs, because it's not a good thing. What's that? Yeah, and we will. We'll be using promises once we get to some actual data. All right, so when we're using MongoDB and Mongoose, we'll be using promises there. All right. Now, what if I wanted to send some kind of JSON data back to my browser? Instead of invoking the send method, I can invoke a JSON method. So let's do that. Let's just say res.json. And then I'm going to pass in an object that's just going to say, or it's going to have a key called hello. And then you can imagine what the string is going to be, the value, world, right? Okay, so we saved that. Let's refresh this here. And now I'm actually giving back JSON. And this is exactly what we're going to want to do, because we've got a React app on the front end. It's going to be expecting some kind of JSON data, right? All right, cool. Any other questions about this before we keep going?
So, in your response,
Mm-hmm.
how would you link to an actual file? Like, let's say the response for a home page, right, for index, I wanted to link to, let's say, app.js or whatever, if we can React app is on.
So,
Is it just a regular route?
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it is just a regular route. you would basically just send. So there's a method on the response object that you could use. Send file, and then you could pass in what was the path of the file that I want to send back to the client.
Yeah.
Huh.
But then I wouldn't need the JSON on top, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that right now. We're just really talking about how to get back some data. Yeah. But that's what you could do. All right. Good. Whoops. Didn't mean to delete that. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is this tool called Postman. Has anybody installed that on their computer already? Oh, we've got some people. Good. All right. Cool. You already have it. So what we're going to use Postman for is to basically test out calls to this API that we're building. Okay. Anybody remember what an API is?
A bridge.
A bridge. Okay. So what it stands for is Application Program Interface, Programming Interface. But what it means in terms of web services is it's essentially going to be some endpoints that we create, some actual paths, and how we're supposed to interact with those endpoints. Okay. So certain paths that we hit are going to expect us to provide some data. Like if I'm trying to update something, well, not only do I want to hit a certain path, I also want to provide what is my update object, right? What is, how do I want this thing to be changed? Okay, so let me open up Postman over here. I've got it open. And then what you can do once you've got this installed on your computer is you can open up new tabs up at the top to make new API requests. So if I want to make a request to my API that we have here, I'm just going to go localhost 5000, and then I'm just going to send this. Okay, and there we go. There's our JSON, nicely formatted, so we know exactly what's there. We can use this to test out our APIs without even involving our front end. Right? I don't have to go into my React app and get all this logic going. I can make sure that all of my routes are working on the back end before I even touch the React app, which is kind of nice. All right. Let's talk about some other types of requests that we can make. So let's say that I'm just making a request to my root route and I want to get all of some resource. Let's say we're building an application that's going to give us back a list of cities or something like that. What I would do is I would probably do /API/cities. Okay? So you guys can see we're prepending our route with API, and then we're saying what is the name of the resource that we're trying to get. Okay? And then my response might be something like this. It might be an object that had a cities key inside of it, and then some array of cities. Now in our case we don't have any, so we'll just pass back an empty array, right? I'll save this, and then we'll go back into Postman and change where we're making the request to. Okay? So we're getting back an empty array of cities. Perfect. Let's also create an endpoint where we can actually create a new city, right? Because I'm going to want to be able to accommodate that as well. So if I go back to my server.js here, I'm creating a post route, all right? And it's going to be to this same route, so it'll be API/cities. Okay. And then let's pretend like we had successfully created a city. Obviously, we're not doing that right now because we don't have any kind of a database set up or anything like that. But I'm just going to send back something saying, hey, you successfully did this. So let's just say res.json. And then my object is going to say, what was the status of this? And we'll say success. And then I'll say my new city that I just created is some empty object. Okay? And then I'll go up here and we'll change this type of request. Instead of a get, we'll turn it into a post request. Okay? So we're seeing exactly what we expect. We got back this object that says the status was success, and we had this blank city. Pretty cool. How would I go about actually sending some data through here? Well, if you look here in the body of your request, whoops, that's the body of the response, right? Where is my... So I'm going to say raw. Normally it's going to be over here, it's going to be checked as none. You want to check the raw and then just change it to, instead of text, turn it into JSON. Okay? So if I wanted to create a city, I would probably put some stuff inside here, and we would say name, Burbank, population, 100,000, something like that. Well, I think it's more than that, but anyway, here, now we have to figure out, well, how are we actually going to get this data that's coming through with our API requests, okay? And in order to do that, I actually have to go up above in my code and make one small change. So let's go up here, right after I create my app, I'm going to say app.use express.json. Okay? Let's talk about what this means real quick. When we invoke the app.use, what that means is that for every request that comes into this application, I want this, whatever thing that I'm feeding it, whatever function I'm feeding it, to run. Okay? Well, what do you guys think this means? Express.json. It means that the type of data that I'm going to be looking for is actually going to be JSON. Okay? Right? That's how we're going to communicate with our applications. So by doing this, it's going to give our request a special little attribute that we can look at. It's going to give it a body attribute. Okay? So down here inside our inside this method here, or this callback, I should say, let's console log rec.body. Okay, and then I'll go back and send that same exact request that we had, and then look down here. So here, we're actually seeing we successfully got that data that was sent to us, right? So that's cool. You guys can see why that's important right there, because if I were to comment this out and save this and send the request again, what was rec.body? Undefined. Okay? So keep that in mind. If you guys ever run into trouble where it's like, hey, I know I'm sending this data to my backend, but my backend doesn't seem to have it, it's probably because you forgot this right here. This is going to be a critical component.
So is the use function more of saying when that app is listening, this is what it's looking for?
Yeah, you could think of it that way. So when we say app.use, it means we're going to run this functionality for every single request.
Okay.
Now, if I wanted to make it more specific, I could provide some path on which I wanted that to happen. So it would be like, if I only wanted this to run for API requests, I could specify some path like that. So it would mean if the path didn't start with /API, it wouldn't be invoking that. Okay. Let's take that out. So we're good to go. Now, if we're making regular HTML form submissions, what are the only two types of form submissions we can do? Yeah, we did them already, right? We did a get and a post request. However, we're going to be submitting our forms through JavaScript. JavaScript allows us to use other types of methods. Okay? Yeah, so we can do, let's say for instance we wanted to delete a city. So I can accept not deleted, delete requests, and I could specify some path. So let's say I want /API/cities, and then what if I don't know what the ID that I could be getting would be? Does that kind of look familiar? Yeah, like Django, and also like what we were doing with reach router and React, right? So it's kind of like a little wildcard parameter here, just saying, I know I'm going to take in some ID, I just don't know what it's going to be up, ahead of time. Okay, and then again, we always need to have a callback function, so request and response. And all I'm going to do inside here is what I want to do is log out what the ID was. Okay, so we'll say console.log. We are going to delete ID of, and then I'll just concatenate that on there. So the place that we need to go to get our ID, the wildcard, it's going to be rec.params.id. Okay? Yeah, so when we say rec.params, that's going to give us an object that has some different key value pairs in it. And in this case, there is only one parameter here. It's just the ID. Okay, so that's the only one that we should see.
Would you create another parameter, maybe /: another wildcard name, and then do that one too, and be a different key value?
Yeah, exactly. So if I wanted to have two wildcards inside here, I could have some second ID, right? And then this would be referenced as rec.params.someSecondID. Okay. In fact, I think before we even do this, let's just console log out rec.params so we can see what it looks like. Rec.params. Comment this out, and then what we're going to return, so we'll just say res.json, and then inside here we'll say status success, and maybe we could have a message, right? Deleted city with ID, and then I'll just concatenate that on there. So it'd be rec.params.id. Okay, save that. Let's go back to our Postman and test this out. So we'll put an ID here. I'll just say it's going to be some gobbledygook, whatever. Yeah, because we'll see when we get into MongoDB, these IDs are kind of long and they don't really look like they mean anything. So I'm going to change this to a delete request, and then let's send that. And then you can see the response down here. It says success, deleted city with ID, and then it gave us that ID that we put up here inside the path. Okay. And then if we look back inside of our console, you can see I console logged rec.params, and it gave us this object right here. Okay. Any questions about this? You guys a little tired? Yes.
I don't understand what is the count exactly.
What it is it's just an object that has all of our parameters that were passed into this route. So in our case,
We don't need to define it before using it.
no, because the request already has that attached to it. So do you know who's attaching it to the request? Express. Express did that for us. Okay. Yep. All right. Any other questions on delete before we move on? So let's say our application now has a couple different things we can do. We can go see all of our cities. We can create a city. We can delete a city. What else might we want to do? Update. That's a good one. So let's come down here. And I'll create a different kind of request again. This is going to be an app.put. Okay? And when we make a put request, it basically means I want to update this resource in some way, right? Okay, what do we want the path to be? Probably API/cities/ID, right? Because I need to know which city am I updating. Rec_res, this is our callback function again. Okay, and then we'll just pass back res.json status success. And then again, our message will just be something like updated city with ID, whatever it was. And again, that's going to be inside our rec.params, the ID, like that. Right? Okay. And then also another thing I want to do is just log out the body of our request. Let's just see what we got in. Rec.body. So let's go back here and let's make an update request. So instead of deleting, we'll do a put request here. And I don't know, we'll do something different. What's another city you guys want? San Fran. What's the population of San Francisco? What?
The same as
Too many? Yeah, ain't that the truth?
10 million or so.
Okay, so 10 million would be like it's less than 1 million? I was going to guess 2 million, but wow. So like 850,000? Yeah, exactly. So this is just the city of San Francisco. All right, so let's send that guy through. So here we go, updated city with ID, and again, it's giving us that ID that we put up in the path, right? And then if I go to my terminal here, it should say something like this. This is the actual request body. So San Francisco and the population that we specified, right? So that's an example of how we might update a document. We would make a put request, okay? Just keep in mind, you cannot make put requests in a regular HTML form. HTML forms only allow for get and post. That's it. Okay.
There's still one more, right?
There's still one more. Yeah, the other thing that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to just get one city by its ID, right? So let's do that. So let's say app.get, and again we'll do API/cities/ID rec_res. Okay, and then inside here, let's just do res.json city. I'm just going to put the ID in here because we should know what that is. Where am I getting that again? rec.params.id, right? Cool. Save that, and then let's make a GET request. Change this guy to a GET request. Okay. And now you see that we've gotten back this object that has a city inside of it, and then inside that city I just have the ID which I got from my actual path. Okay.
So conceptually, what's the difference between a post and put? Besides the HTML.
Not a whole lot other than the put request is saying we're really just trying to do an update here. Versus when we do post request, that would be we're typically creating something. So the HTTP verb is giving us some idea of what's actually going on here in the same sense of when we did a delete request, right? We know, okay, that means that I'm deleting some resource on the server. All right, so let's glance at the code real quick. Make sure that everyone's on a pretty good page about this. Let's real quickly look at line 19. Daniel, what's happening there?
That is our delete function that we're using not request to delete ID
Okay.
of the city.
So we are going to use it to actually accept requests at this path, right? And we're specifically accepting what kind of requests?
A delete
A
request.
delete request, yeah. We're listening for a specific type of HTTP verb, okay? And then we're passing it the path.
Mhm.
What else are we passing?
The request and the request and
No, we're not passing in the request and the response. What are we passing in?
the ID.
No. This is a callback function.
Callback.
And this should look pretty similar to what we were seeing with Django. Remember how we would have a route,
Mm-hmm.
and then the second argument was what function we wanted to run when that route was hit? Same kind of concept, right?
Okay.
This is the path, and then this is the function that I want to run when that path is hit. Okay, cool. So let's say that we've hit this path, and we're inside of our callback function. What's happening now? So on line 20.
We are console logging our function.
Params is not a function. Params is actually just an object. Okay? So rec.params is going to be an object that has some keys inside it that correspond to these guys that have colons. Yeah. Okay? And then what else do we do? Line 22. What is 22 doing? So res is representing our response. Okay? So what does it look like we're doing?
Giving it a response.
Yeah, this is our process of actually passing a response back to the client. So we're saying res.json, so we're calling this JSON method, right? And then we're passing that JSON method an actual object. Okay, which has some different things in it, just the status, the message, and then the message includes that rec.params.id, right? Was there anything else you guys wanted to glance over here before?
The, response.json, is that just a does it add that object to the JSON response, or we'll take a step back right now. I guess my question is, what if you're trying to call, like, you're adding to that JSON response on different lines? Will you just write over?
It's actually going to complain. It should say something like response already sent.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
this is just define that because
Yeah, you only want to call it one time.
response to that.
Yeah, if you've already sent something back to the client, you don't want to send anything after that. Because a response is like a one-time thing. You know, it's like, all right, here, you take
Right.
this, and that's it. That cycle's over.
And in terms of the communication between clients and hosts, is it like a, I guess, send and confirm type things occurring, or I guess communication happening? So like client makes post requests that either the server either responds with the content itself, or does it like respond like, yeah, I got it, and then I'll send your thing, and then the client will say, yeah, I got it, and then communication goes.
Well, you generally don't want to do it that way, because if I respond, then my request response cycle is over. Right? So then I can't really add something else to it. At least not in the way that things are now. There's something coming down the pipe called HTTP2, but it's not really widely in use just yet. HTTP2 would allow us to sort of like push some data to the client as we see fit. But in this case, all we're doing is we're responding to one request with one response.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be like you'd respond and say, hey, let me get back to you with that in a couple seconds. You would just get the data first and then send it back.
Yeah.
You know, if it took a couple seconds or
I
whatever.
guess I mean it's just maybe like me thinking about like how like the promise structure is,
Mm-hmm.
and then doing that on the reverse side when it's a promise when the client is responding, in which I send it out as a response. At that at that point I don't care if you get it or not. It's just I'm just gonna send it out there.
Yeah, well, we could start doing something once we've sent the request out, right? We could still keep moving with our code.
Right.
It's just that we don't really want to try to present that data on screen until it's actually come back. That's where the whole .then thing comes into play, right? It's like when our .then runs, that means that I've gotten back whatever theoretically whatever I was expecting from my API. All right, I'm seeing some tired faces out there. Any other questions before we break? Okay, one final thing. We're gonna put a survey out there for you guys about this new MERN curriculum because it is so fresh. We just want to kind of get your opinions on it and see how you guys are liking it so far. So I'll put that up on Mattermost. Please do fill that out. It would be extremely helpful. All right, thanks guys.